something about, was it 2:15? So we do.
So just sorry for people in the UK, that's 7:15 UK time.
2:15 local, and I think you can always judge a lot by the body language. I know you guys are out there. You look at the body language of the Irish players right now. They're not looking exactly optimistic. They're pointing in general areas. Corey Anderson is out there alongside Andrew Balbirnie as well. But at 9:30, all the players are out there trying to assess where it's at. Now very much back into the dressing rooms for what could be a long wait. Possibly a 1:30 start might be a best case scenario. That's just spitballing, but that's what I'd be guessing.
That'll be 6:30 UK, so that would mean we'd be able to get an extra 45 minutes from the 5 overs, which would be around about another 10 overs. That might be a 10 over game.
10-12 overs per side in a dream scenario.
Well, here come the umpires for the pitch inspection at 10:30, and they're going to walk from the far end of the ground to our end of the ground, the media end of the ground. They're going to get here, they'll go, it's still wet, we'll come back in an hour and a half, because it is so wet out there.
What about the pitch? The actual pitch itself? Is it the
no, the
outfield is the issue, isn't it?
Pitch is fine. Run-ups they're a little bit damp, but they're hard enough. You could probably get away with them. But it's the outfield, and they've mopped up the left-hand side of it. But now they've got the mammoth task of doing behind the bowler's arms each end and the right-hand side, because you've got to do it little bit by little bit. And you can see they've got the squeegees now, and they're emptying the squeegees with so much water, just piling it over the Toblerone, over the boundary rope on the other side, and going again, and they're emptying it every 30, 40 seconds.
Basically, as a rule of thumb, if you're watching or you're seeing any pictures, then any of the light green stuff, which we might call the square and the bowler's run-ups, they're okay, they're quite hard.
Yeah.
Any of the darker green stuff is absolutely catastrophic. Now, today's umpires are Rod Tucker and Shafadullah, and I think they'll have the easiest task in the world at the moment, as we're just seeing on our screens. Where are they in relation to us? They are
right in front of us.
Away to our right, okay.
They're almost being guided, aren't they, by the reserve umpire Richard Kettleborough, who's been out there the whole time.
That's got a little bit better from when we were out there, but it's still pretty grim. I think Richard Kettleborough was saying, I've been round and round and round here, and it's not going to be for a while.
I've got to give a shout out to one person out there, the Getty photographer Matt from Australia. He must have taken some of the most brilliant images I've ever seen at a sporting event that had no play the other day, because that colour of the Nepal crowd here, I don't know if you saw any of the stuff on social media, it was mind-blowing. And they'd come in from every corner of the country, over 40 states. I kept a list this time, over 40 different states, and then a whole load of them weren't able to get home, so they were renting cars. I heard stories of people driving 32 hours back home.
Wow.
And they came all this way, they spent all this money for not a single ball to be bowled, but they still loved it. They still seemed to love every second. It was extraordinary.
Well, the passion is what this sport is all about, isn't it? And you feel for them, because they haven't had the best of times. They've got still a game left, or they
two left. They play tonight against South Africa, and then on Sunday night against Bangladesh, which could be a massive match in the context of the group. The Dutch will need Nepal to beat Bangladesh. For Nepal to get through, they'll need to win their last two, which obviously, having never beaten a test nation, may well be a bridge too far. But if they could just win one of those two, and you have to remember they've got their leg spinner back, Sandeep Lamachani, who's got into the Caribbean, I believe via Toronto. So they've got another sort of boost to their squad. That's Group D. Here in the Group A, like there was yesterday a realistic chance of maybe 3 associates making the Super 8, with the Netherlands, Scotland and USA all in the mix. The Dutch chances have waned significantly after that loss to Bangladesh yesterday. They were in a winning position, 111 for 3, needing 160 to win. And for the Scots, well, unless they do something extraordinary against Australia, you would think Australia and England will still get through that Group B.
Well, yeah, but it is a one-off game.
Yep.
And you never know, if there's rain in Grocery Slit, then it could all, that would send Scotland through, because then they would end up with 6 points.
Correct, yeah, and England can only get to 5, can't they?
That's
they
right.
can't get to 6.
Just a reminder there, what Andrew was saying. So the game we have here is due to start at 3:30. It's not going to happen. 3:30 UK time. We remain wildly optimistic that there may be a game breaking out at some point, a bit between 6:30 and 7 o'clock your time perhaps, but time will tell. 2 further games in the Men's T20 World Cup. Every ball of every game, don't forget, live on Fire Sports Extra and the Listen app on ABC, as well as the ICC website. South Africa against Nepal. That game starts at midnight UK time. And that's taking place in Kingstown, so let's hope the weather's a bit better there for the Nepalese fans. And the last game today is New Zealand against Uganda. It's a dead rubber because New Zealand are out. They have not qualified for an ICC T20 World Cup for the first time in 10 years.
For latter stages, yeah.
Latter stages,
Either
yeah.
a 50 over, an ODI or a T20 World Cup. The first time they haven't got through the initial group. And really their tournament was over before it started. The schedule for them in particular was a strange one, wasn't it?
Had to wait a long time to play. And then they played Afghanistan
and West Indies. And their first two games are very difficult. I'll tell you something. I think Afghanistan are looking like maybe one of the best sides in the tournament. They're such a balanced bowling attack. Gurbaz is the leading run scorer in the event. They got tested at points yesterday by Papua New Guinea on a tricky wicket in the Brian Lara Cricket Academy, but the way in which they closed that match out, I wouldn't rule them out making a first ever semi-final, or who knows, a final.
Peter Della Penna has joined us, and he's got a big grin on his face. He's probably been out there and, had a look at the pitch, well, not the pitch so much as the outfield. And what do you think, Peter? You think there's any chance that we'll get play? You're a veteran of these parts. Oh, I need to turn you on.
I found it quite funny, Daniel, reading some of the stuff in the lead up to this game, some of the quotes from players and from officials talking about how wonderful the drainage is here in Lauderhill. Lenny's been down here plenty of times. I've been down here for 15 years. Did they transplant a different stadium and a different surface to the one that we're used to seeing here, Lenny? Because I don't know which Lauderhill surface they're talking about.
It has got better, in fairness. It has improved.
It's all relative.
Yeah, no, it used to struggle here. But I was just telling the guys before you came in, Peter, about the USPL in last November, and we had very similar 2 days of rain, and we did play the next day, albeit a bit later in the day.
And it was quite biblical rain, though, wasn't it? I mean, the rain that's fallen on here has been absolutely extraordinary.
Well, it's hilarious. You go into the entrance to the Broward County Park and Stadium here, coming off of Sunrise Boulevard, and there's a marquee with the LED signboard that says, "Today, T20 World Cup, USA versus Ireland." And then the ad rotates, and the next ad says, "Be ready, hurricane season, June 1st, November 30th, Fort Lauderdale, Florida."
Yes, I know. Well, I mean, Andrew's been telling us about the various alerts you get and warning people not to travel, and that's absolutely necessary. And of course, it's cricket, so a bunch of intrepid maniacs like us have travelled, and we're here to report on an awful lot of clearing up. Look, you never know. It feels extraordinary to me that they would even think they can stand a chance, having walked out there, but I don't know. I'm not familiar with these conditions. Actually, as the Super Sopper's going round, that was just in front of me. That was an area that I was walking on earlier, and I thought, well, this is absolutely inconceivable that we get any play.
But the difference in an hour is incredible, isn't it? Because an hour ago, that Super Sopper was driving across there, if you will, for want of a better description.
Really.
It was, wasn't it? And now it's not really kicking up much water, and every time it's going to the boundary edge and spurting out another, God knows how many litres onto the outside the boundary rope.
This side of the ground, for people who are listening, to our right side, which is the east side of the stadium, this is the side of the ground that notoriously has always had the biggest drainage issues. So you were talking about it before. The square is not really an issue. The west side, the west grandstand, is not really an issue. It's the east side, on the kind of the clock tower side. For those of you who may have seen pictures of the stadium here in Lauderhill and have been to the venue, the clock tower side, where you're going to that side of the stadium, that's where the issues are, and that's where they're working overtime to try and get all the water off. And the fact that they have a Super Sopper is again something that didn't always used to be the case here. There was a match here between India and West Indies in either 2016 or 2019 where they had a broadcast transmission failure. So the match was delayed by a half hour because they couldn't show the match live back to India at 10:30 in the morning. And despite beautiful conditions, we had a half hour, 40-minute delayed start. And then 4 overs into India's chase, the rains came. And it only came down for about 10-15 minutes, but it was this side of the ground where you had Mark Parham, the groundsman who came over from New Zealand, who's done a lot of work in the U.S., was waving his arms, waving his fists, and you had broadcast officials waving their arms and waving their fists, and he's saying you can't play here. And there was a battle between MS Dhoni on one side saying we have to play, and then on the other side, the West Indies guys are saying we can't play in this. And MS Dhoni gave a famous quote saying about how the West Indies guys were saying it's not safe here, and Dhoni said, last time I checked, they don't have Shoaib Akhtar bowling in their team. How is it unsafe? There's not somebody who's going to scare us to make the ground unsafe, and there was a back and forth. Those days are long gone, Daniel. The drainage is a little bit better than it was in that era.
I think we got, by accident, a little bit of an update from Katie Martin, who was signalling to her TV crew. She was quite a confusing signal. Katie's marvellous, but she can be confusing. And she signalled 11:30, and then she signalled, and 11:30, by the way, your time back home in the UK is 4:30. She signalled that, and then she did the kind of, like, it's all over sign. Now, whether she thinks that what that means is they're going to come out at 11:30, inspect again, and then make a decision at 11:30, I don't know, but I think there might be another inspection at 11:30. The umpires are still out there, I've got to say, but they're not really inspecting anymore. They're rather resignedly standing there.
Did she also fold her arms across her?
She did, which also means
like
overturn your decision.
Yes, it was all happening, wasn't it?
It was a bit.
Afar, yeah.
We're trying to read the runes, people, so bear with us. I'm having to learn Katie Martin's idiosyncratic sign language.
What has been fascinating for me, though, there's barely been an American player come out. I know Nitish Kumar is out there now, and Andries House has spent a little bit of time out there. Corey Anderson was too, but every single Irish player has been out at some point.
Well, the Americans, surely, Peter, will come out and they'll look very concerned, and they'll frown, and they'll look at their shoes, and then they might actually sort of slip over just for the cameras.
Well, we got Shadley van Schalkwyk, who's got the most magnificent socks on today. I got to say, he's got the stars on his left sock, and then he's got the stripes on his right sock, and he's given that really aggressive foot stomp to try and make it clear. Hey,
it can't be done.
There's some water coming up out of the ground here. We can't be playing in this.
Yes, but in fairness to him, there is a lot of water coming up. So, I don't know. Like I say, I don't know the local conditions. If this was in England, I walked out there, the umpires would have abandoned this immediately, and it would not be happening. But it might drain, and it's hot. I've got to tell you, it is hot. It's sticky. There's not a lot of wind, I'm afraid. I don't know if that would help, and normally it would. There's no real direct sunlight now. We've got a bank of high clouds. They don't look rain-bearing. The assumption is that another bit of rain, and when rain comes, even when there's a light shower is quite heavy in English terms, British terms.
They don't do anything in half measures in America, do they? When it rains,
no, it's supersized.
It
supersized me. Yeah,
it really does.
I mean, we had that in New York, and we had it in Dallas actually. In Dallas, the Grand Prairie it sort of resembled the Somme as far as there was just so much mud and tractor marks and like standing water and people wading through mud where all the trucks were. Now, having a look at the radar Andrew Leonard is showing me here, doesn't look too bad.
Yeah, so I think we have about probably 2.5 hours of clear weather before that next band, which is it's all coming up from the Caribbean, isn't it? It's all coming up. If you come kind of north of Cuba and from Belize, that seems to be the way it's tracked the whole kind of storm cycle. If that hits us, we're...
Well, and the worst part, last night on the forecast, and again this morning, the worst part is headed for Miami. And geographically, again, for the people not totally up to speed on their Florida geography, Miami is about 30 miles south of here. So if it stays to the south, Fort Lauderdale and Lauderhill is looking like it might just escape it. At best, might get a glancing blow from the rain, but the heaviest stuff in terms of the amount of rainfall that's been absorbed has been down in Miami. And
yeah, I mean, it's been diabolical there. Tell us about Lauderhill, though, because, I've not been an expert on American cricket, but I've been very aware of the fact that this stadium has been here for quite some time. Tell us a little bit about the history of the stadium and how it came about and what significance it has for the USA national team and Major League cricket in general here.
Well, this has been an event that was dreamed about for the last 17, 18 years. The initial reason for building this stadium was that back in 2007, when the 50 over World Cup was being hosted in the West Indies, there was a plan in place to try and get either warm-up matches or some actual live tournament matches assigned to Florida. They wanted to include USA as part of that bid process as well. It kind of flew under the radar. They couldn't get approval to build this stadium in time. When the bid process was being sorted out in 2004, 2005, they couldn't get it done. And so this stadium wound up getting approved, but with all the usual red tape that happens in municipal processes, it didn't actually open until 2008. This is a $70 million park complex. It's not just the stadium. You've got a water park behind on the south side. You've got
how appropriate.
Yes.
Am I saying so?
You've got the tropical splish splash slide park there, which is a big hit for families in this area. You've got 2 satellite cricket fields outside on the west side of the stadium, which are used for recreational purposes. There are artificial wickets out there, so it's just one of those all-weather wickets that you
So
get.
the league teams play there?
League teams, yeah. So for people who want to come here and play, if you want to rent the actual stadium wicket and use the turf wicket, it's a $1,500 per day rental fee.
That's not bad, really.
All things
For a whole
considered.
stadium, yeah.
Yeah, you get everything, but club cricketers obviously can't afford that. So these satellite fields, it's $125 a day if you want to rent those for cricket. So those obviously get a lot more use. Then you've got basketball courts. I believe you've got tennis courts out here. You've got picnic areas, and there's a whole sprawling and all-encompassing part of this whole complex. It opened in 2008. The first tournament they had here was in November 2008 when USA hosted an ICC Americas event with teams like Canada, Cayman Islands, Suriname. And then the first T20Is that they had were in 2010 between Sri Lanka and New Zealand. Those were played on a Saturday and Sunday. And then 2012, you had a much bigger event with New Zealand and West Indies. That was the first time West Indies came here. And that's when this venue really started to arrive, where you had 10,000 crowds. You've got 5,000 permanent seats on the full standing pavilion side of the stadium. And then when you get a carnival like this that comes to town, those 5,000 seats that are the permanent seats get buttressed by another 10 to 15,000 seats on the opposite side of the stadium. So most of the stuff that we're seeing here, Daniel, is stuff that is never around 350 days of the year. And
What about the concessions, the hot dog stalls, the things that, because I've got quite a bit of time to fill, and we haven't really eaten properly for the last 24 hours, so I might treat myself to some more improper food.
I tell you what, the big thing around here, Daniel, is not necessarily within the stadium premises itself. There's a restaurant across the street called Joy's Roti. Joy's Roti Delight, that's the full name.
Joy's Roti Delight.
Joy's Roti Delight.
Bit of the Caribbean here in Florida, isn't it?
Yeah, it's owned by
amazing.
a Guyanese family, and Joy is no longer with us, but his wife has carried on the restaurant. And if you ever come to this part of the world, going to Joy's Roti is a must, especially for when the West Indies have played here. When the West Indies played here in 2012 and 2016, you get